Welcome to another episode of the Unspoken Truths of Digital Leadership, Living the Leadership Values. I guess we'll talk about the unspoken truths of leadership, the dark side and the learnings from dealing with conflict with integrity. And today I have the pleasure to have Tega Diegbe with me today, also known as the Systems Master, although he likes to call it the Thingy Master.
The systems master, like that is a compliment. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that lovely, I guess, introduction. The systems master. Never been called that. Not to my face, anyway. Not to my face.
I've always known you as the Systems Master because of what you do and the
Is it
background is.
is it systems, or is it processes, or is it just an unrelenting need to solve problems? I don't know.
I would put it down as problem solver,
Okay.
but the way you do it is through systems and processes. And systems work only by having processes in place. And you put those in place to do that.
I
So
get
there's
I get that. I can dig that.
there's the whole technical, we could go into the whole technicalities of it.
But you read my email, so you know I don't like labels. So whenever you try to label me, I try to finagle my way out of it. So that was all that was. Sorry.
I agree because labels is something that I used to I chase as well. I know because of the skill set that we do, and for those that don't know what Tega does, he does a lot of systems processes, but outsourcing, but streamlining businesses in a way that it like.
Let me help you out. Right. The best way that I can describe what I do
Yeah.
is I I help people. The people I've chosen to help are just business owners. I help people solve problems in their business by taking a systems thinking approach to it.
Hmm.
And once we have those systems laid out and documented, I then further help them by getting them to bring in people, virtual assistants, if you will, to do the stuff that they don't want to do, whether it's in the business or in their life, right? Um, Problem someone might have. You live in a big house, you don't want to tidy the house, or you don't want to tidy the house up by yourself. Right, you can put the system in place for cleaning it, or you can hire a cleaner that already has a system. Right, I just ask the questions to help you figure out which path you want to take. I'm not a big advocate of shoving things down people's throats. Like I said, you read my emails, so you probably get the fact that in those emails, I'm trying to get a conversation going rather than saying this is what you need to do, or this is how I do stuff, and because this is how I do stuff, this is how you need to do stuff. I always operate from that place of what does the person want to do, right? Because if you can meet them at the level where they're at and deal with things the way that they want to deal with things, they're more likely to build those habits and carry those habits on into the future than you shoving it down their throat and they do it for 4 weeks, and after those 4 weeks they stop doing it because there was something in it that they didn't like.
How did you get into this space?
When you say this space, do you mean what I'm doing now or just this space in general?
In the online system space, what you do, how you got into the the systems element of it.
Right. So the journey to focus on systems for me has been a long one. I think I did what everybody else would do who started out or who's just starting out in this position, and that is buy a whole lot of products, thinking that the more products you buy, the closer you get to the secret of figuring out this online business thing. Um, Buy other products, go through them, sometimes act on them, sometimes don't act on them, or when you do act on them, whenever you come up against the first real hurdle in making that system or that course work, you decide to pack it in because you're not ready to do the work. So I've been through different iterations of that, and then one day, I think it was 7 years ago now, I picked up a product from a guy called Ryan Levesque, which was his SSF thing. Is it's now called like the ask method, but back then it was SSF, which is the survey formula. I picked it up because I was interested in the idea of segmentation and hyper segmentation, which is really what that is about. And when I picked it up, I got this email from a guy called Dan Meredith. You know him. And in that email, he said that he was Ryan's customer success manager, and he just wanted to make sure I liked the product, and if I had any questions, to reach out to him. As someone who likes challenges, he put his number in the email. And because he put his number in the email, I thought, why the heck not give the guy a call? So I called him. We spoke for about 10 minutes. And then after speaking to him, we kind of became friends, and like we would exchange messages on Facebook and what have you. And then I think it was like a year, maybe 2 years later, he posted up about he was starting his own group and he needed someone to do the stuff that he didn't want to do, which happened to be the stuff I like doing, because that put me behind the scenes and put me like really, really in my element. So I put myself up for the position. He made me jump through a few hoops. Apparently, he tried to make people jump through hoops, but nobody else wanted to jump through the hoops. I was the only one.
Wow.
So I jumped through all the hoops, and then he did everything he could to dissuade me from, not actively dissuade me from taking the role, but just putting up roadblocks to see if I really wanted to do it. I made it through that process, and here we are 5 years later. I don't even know what my role would be. Operations, if I can even say that. But I handle everything from making sure the website work to making sure the paid buttons send people to where they're meant to go, and make sure the deliverables that are promised are what we deliver to clients and customers.
It's an interesting journey, that one.
It's interesting because I've kind of just distilled it. Everybody has interesting journeys, right? It can get really confusing sometimes to figure out what is the dangling red thread in everybody's story. And because I'm quite introspective, I remember that story because of things that were going on in my life, my personal life at the time, and kind of how everything just came together. It's a story that I remember because if I didn't send that message when I saw his post on Facebook, and if I didn't persevere through the different hoops he was making me jump through, then I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. So I remember it.
Fantastic. When it comes to leadership in your path, because you manage so many team members, is there conflicts that happen within teams meetings and stuff that you have, or is it pretty straightforward?
In what way?
When tasks don't get done or deadlines aren't met.
Right. So I'm a pretty laid back guy, right? Um, I guess I would say that my leadership style is pretty laid back.
Mm.
It's been an experience for me to learn what it is to lead. I mean, I just told you the story of how I got to where I am, like by not taking the leadership route. But it turns out it was kind of the leadership route, because leading, in my opinion, is more about doing what needs to be done, regardless of the circumstance you find yourself in. Right. So the example you just mentioned there was a deadline being missed. Deadlines get missed. It's a fact of life. Deadlines get missed because if you're working with people, you have to deal with a whole bunch of things that may be related or not related, right? So deadlines get missed. If you operate from the place that deadlines get missed, the way I approach it is I tend to think, what systems can I put in place to make sure that we reduce a deadline getting missed? And even doing that, the deadlines still get missed, right? It's, for me, it comes down to catching things early, or being aware of where things are and how a particular project or task is going, and know where the team needs help, and if I need to step in to do what needs to be done to make sure the deadline doesn't get missed. When I started out and our deadlines were missed, the more experience I built and the more experienced I got, less deadlines get missed. They still do happen. Like, personal example, nobody really knows this, but we missed the first deadline for my podcast 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago we missed the first deadline, and the reason we missed the deadline is unforeseen circumstances, right? The people the guys that work with me, they're all over the world. One of them is in America, a couple of them are in the Philippines, one of them is in Newcastle, where I am. So with the lockdown and everything that was going on, and some personal issues that the team had going on, the deadline just got missed. I got busy, and I didn't realize, we're about to miss this deadline. And it gets to the day that the podcast is about to be released, and I log into my my task management system, and I see the task is still impending. I'm like, no, this was meant to be done. So I sent a message to everyone. It's like, yo, what's going on? I'm like, oh no, sorry, this was going on and this was going on. Okay, we've missed it now, so fix it. Get it out. Once it's out, let me know so that I know that it's done and I don't need to worry about it. And it got done. They didn't miss the deadline because they were being malicious or because they were skiving off. They just missed the deadline because life happens.
So when it comes to those kind of conversations, is it was it harder? Do you do video calls, or do you do just still messaging and
Right.
text? Because previously, obviously back a few years back, when videos was less prominent and people still didn't really use videos, conferencing and stuff like that, was it harder to communicate back then with just messaging and
Um, Depends how far back you're talking. Depends how far back you're talking and which which thing you're talking about. Are you talking about my thing, or are you talking about the thing I do with Dan? Because they're two completely different dynamics.
Okay,
Uh,
let's talk
or
about the things that you do in your own projects, because
okay,
Dan is obviously here and you get to meet face to face is
yeah,
different.
yeah.
But when you're dealing with your team who's abroad in USA or in the Asia and things like that.
All right. So we've always used video from my team from the get go. Right.
Mm,
That is part of my hiring process, if you will,
yeah.
because I realize I may be an introvert, but there is a need to see people. There's a need to do what we're doing right now and see people's mannerisms and what have you. So I have it built into my hiring process in the form that I check whenever doing the hiring. I check for broadband speed, and there's a minimum broadband speed that makes me consider you. If you fall below that line, just because of the way we work, video, downloading stuff, uploading stuff, it's not going to be a fit. You may be the best candidate, but you haven't got the required resources, if you will, to become part of the team. So for myself and my team, we've always used video, always.
Fantastic. And I asked this because you've always been, you said, the introverted guy. You don't really like to do the speaking and things, so it's always interesting to find out what
All
works
right.
for you as well.
So okay. So on that, right? I think this is a bit of a. It's not a mislabel. It's a misinterpretation of the label. As
Mm,
an introvert, what I see that as is I, compared to an extrovert, I get my energy from more intimate interactions.
mm,
Right. So speaking with my team, that's a one-to-one thing. That's a more intimate thing. It's kind of happening behind closed doors. We get to know each other. We get to build up that relationship. So that's easy. Speaking one to many, it's not really something that I do. I mean, I can kind of do it, well, half my way around it with what we're doing now. To me, this is a private conversation between myself and yourself, right?
mm.
It may go out to the public, it may not. I tend not to worry about that. I just focus on the here and now, which is the conversation we're having right now. Whereas the extroverts, they get their energy from that one to many interaction. There will be people suffering right now from lockdown because they need that outside influence, that external feedback. It basically fuels them. Like Dan is a perfect example of this, although he's a bit contrarian because he's an introvert that trained himself to be an extrovert. But whenever I say introvert, that's what I mean. I don't mean that I like to, well, even though I do like to hide behind the keyboard and it is my safe space, I use the term introvert in the sense that in my interactions, I prefer them to be a little bit more intimate, one to
Mm,
one. The fewer people, the better.
awesome. And when it comes to dealing with one too many for you, how do you cope with the tension and the stress and the uncertainty that comes with it?
Uh, I'm not
Because
quite sure. I'm not quite sure how to answer it, and the reason I'm not quite sure how to answer it is because it's something that I am still navigating. like I say, you are on my email list. You are seeing the emails. I am trying to trying trying is not the right word. I'm working to get over that little hump, if we can call it that.
Hmm.
And what seems to be, well, there are two things I'm doing that seem to be working for me. In the moment of creation, whether
Yeah.
it's a video, whether it's a Facebook post or an email, in the moment of creation, I imagine I'm speaking to one person,
Hmm.
right? So similar to the example I just gave, right now, as this is going on, I'm speaking to you, you're asking me the questions, I'm answering them, and I can answer them openly and as fully as I can without being worried about anything outside of what's happening right now. So I just maintain that space whenever I'm creating something. And in the case of my emails, and in the case of what's going to be happening in the next few days, in the case of the stuff that goes out publicly on Facebook, I am delegating that being pushed out to remove the emotional attachment I have to it. Um, and that's how I handle it. Right, that's how I handle it. I've had to work on getting consistent with producing stuff,
Hmm.
and to do that, I had to get over that fear of, oh no, this is going to 100 people, or this is going to 1,000 people. Well, 20% of 1,000 people on my Facebook.
Hmm.
I had to get over that fear, and to get over that, I've broken it down into steps. Step one was get consistent doing it. So for the last 3 months, apart from yesterday, I've sent an email to my list every Monday for the last 3 months. It didn't matter if I didn't have anything to say. I think there was one email I sent where the subject line was, I have nothing to say. And
Yeah.
I ended up talking about interesting things in the email. So getting that practice of being consistent has been like the hurdle. And where I am right now is figuring out how to get over that fear. I guess we can call it a fear. How
Hmm.
to get over that fear of, if I put this out, no one's gonna like it, or if I put this out, it's gonna be crickets, and that's where I am right now.
Yeah, I could fully relate to that because that's what I've been doing. Is whether I have something to say or not in my group, I just post it, even if it's short, if it's long, then it comes with it.
Funny story. I have a group. I started a group. There is, I think there's like 30 people in now.
I'm in your
Just
group.
oh, I'm talking to the right person then, right? So I have a group, and there's been so many stop starts with the group. I have no idea what to do with the group. Like
No,
I legitimately have no idea what to do with the group. The premise of starting the group has changed. Well, in my mind, it's changed so much that the group almost doesn't feel relevant anymore. I'm actually toying with the idea of deleting it and starting over. But then again, I'm thinking, really? How about you just feel your way through the uncomfortableness of the fact that you haven't done anything in there in like 3 months? Address that fact head on, and then just like you've done with the email, be consistent with putting stuff in there and see what comes of it. If I do that, I don't know, but we'll see what happens.
there was one thing, the idea that I was toying around with was emailing whatever I post in the group into my email list. Because when I look at the groups, you see the numbers, how many people seen this post and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's still not showing like the amount of numbers that's in the members, like how many members in the group. You only see like 5 or 10, and it's like, well, I've got like 30 odd plus members in the group. Not all of them have seen the post, so does that mean they miss out on that content that I post? So should I email it to them as well? Because when they join my group, they can join the email list.
got you. See, I started my group on a whim. Um, I went to Portugal with a friend last year for like a little holiday. And when we were there, inevitably, because he has his own business, we inevitably ended up talking about work and what we were doing. And he said that he thought it'd be a good idea for me to start a group. Um, I think I may have been slightly inebriated at the time. So I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. I am going to start a group. And after that holiday, I did start a group, and I kept it going for a little while. I guess this kind of ties back to what I was saying in telling people what to do. I kept it going for a little while, but then again, as time went on, there was so much conflict. Is it conflict? I don't know if I would call it conflict, but there was real heavy.
Resistance.
Yeah, there we go. That's the word I was going to say. There was real heavy resistance for me showing up in the group. I didn't know how to show up in the group. Maybe
Yeah.
because I hadn't decided how I wanted to show up in the group, or maybe because I didn't realize the amount of work it would entail in those first few months that the group is getting started to like kind of get everything rolling. Maybe that's what it was, but it didn't gel. It didn't gel. Like maybe I need to do what I did with the emails. Like I said, I just practice getting consistent, showing up in the group. It doesn't matter what I'm saying, just be consistent doing it and then see where that leads.
The thing with your consistency and what I love about it is that you're constantly moving forwards with the needle. And I know Dan mentions this as well. As long as every day you do something that moves you forward, even just a little bit forward, or one step at a time, that's all that matters. It's like
Mm,
I get the whole, you don't have to move fast, but as long as you're moving forward, you're
yeah, but
still getting things
that
done.
yeah in my opinion anyway, that opens up. I posted about this on Facebook. I think it was 2 weeks ago. The idea of motion versus action, right? Because you can convince yourself that you are moving forward when you're not really
Mm.
doing anything, right? You can definitely do that. I'm speaking from experience here. That's definitely something that I've done, right? If I can open a folder on my computer now and go to like work in progress, and in that folder I'll find different things that I've started, and I've gotten a decent amount of progress in, which I've just dumped because I would have, not I would have, I definitely arrived at the point where I have to talk about it, like put it out publicly to see if it has legs and if it can run on its own, and I just decide, nah, not doing it, on to the next thing, right? So you could say, yeah, I am getting a lot of it seems like I'm getting a lot of action or a lot of progress, but you can still get stuck in that loop of, I guess, when you say motion versus action, it becomes planning versus doing. Are
Yeah.
you actually doing anything, or are you perpetually planning?
I'm laughing because I'm exactly at the same point where I could go onto a project like the Facebook lives and stuff, and then come to it and goes editing, subtitling, and then be like, "Do I want to launch this?" I was like, "Do I want to repurpose this? Do I want to trim this down?" It's like, and then you find something else. Go, oh, the website needs tidying up.
So I get where you're coming from, right? And this is where I was, which is what led me to learn about systems, and what's led me to learn about how to predict, no, yeah, how to predictably hire people that will do the stuff that you don't want to do,
Hmm.
right? Because there's so many things I want to do, so many things I want to do, and I realize there are only 24 hours in a day. There's no way I'm going to be able to do everything, right? So my mentality, especially of late, is do it once, systemize it, and then have somebody else do it for you. So the content repurposing stuff that you talk about, I have a system for doing that. Surprise, surprise! I have a system for doing that. What does that look like? Do a Facebook live stream. Once the live stream is done, send the link to the team or upload the video to S3, create a task card. Can you please repurpose this? And then in my product management system, there's a breakdown of what needs to happen for content to be repurposed. Someone watches the videos, they take out the nuggets, make a note of the timestamps, video editor goes in, cuts out those timestamps and makes them into snippets with the templates that we have. Sometimes they get turned into blog posts. No, primarily they get turned into blog posts because when I do something, I have this tendency to just blur, blur, like speak. If I know you and if I'm comfortable with you, that happens. If I don't, I'm a little bit more reserved, right? So the longer pieces of content get turned into blog posts, and then you get snippets from those blog posts that go wherever you want them to go. And if you want to push it even further, you can take the audio from that, and that becomes an audio asset you can do something with. So to kind of help you out, it's just for you to systemize it and then find reliable people to actually do the breaking down of it. So your job becomes to be in charge of the creation, and then they become put other people in charge of the repurposing.
And for those that are interested in getting a team and systemizing things, how much on average would it cost in repurposing or having a team on a monthly basis or weekly basis? Obviously,
Like
depending
asking,
on or it obviously depends on the skills and the experience of the team as well, right?
that's kind of asking how long is a piece of string.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because everybody, like, are at different points in business.
Mm.
For some people, it makes sense. For some people, they would have convinced themselves that it doesn't make sense, right? But for me, the way I look at it, when it comes to hiring, is I need to know enough to be able to instruct somebody to produce an end result
Yeah.
that I can produce, and they can do it in less time that it takes me to do it, right? That kind of leaves a lot of wiggle room, right? Common theme here, take it doesn't need to be boxed in. It leaves a lot of wiggle room in what I do, and to some degree in what they do, and in how they help me. Let's take podcasting, for example.
Mm.
I stumbled into the podcasting thing because I was trying to learn how to hire reliable people, and somebody said, "Who? Why don't you use me as a guinea pig?" Because I have my podcast, but I'm spending all this time on my podcast, and I think I could be spending it better elsewhere. If you can find someone that's willing to do the work at this price, you can use me as like a living case study. I still have that client to this day. And then what that meant was I had to then go away and learn beginning to intermediate level of podcasting, because in that respect it doesn't need to be advanced. For the deliverables that we had to deliver, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
for the deliverables that we had to deliver to this person, we didn't need to be like super duper experts. We just needed to know how to do what he needed done. In this case, it was like a super simple edit, creating the show notes, uploading to WordPress, um, and then sorting out the file in his podcast host. Super easy. So how do I figure that stuff out? I go away and I learn it. YouTube. Not like, I think YouTube is so undermined as a learning resource because people don't want to invest the time it takes to throw through all the material on there. Right. So YouTube, figure out the basics. It gets to a point whereby you get past the basics, and the only way that you progress past the basics is to build experiential knowledge. That's when you start doing stuff instead of learning stuff, right? So one thing that I've always done from the get-go is, as I learn stuff, especially more and more as I figured out I wanted to help people hire people, as I learn stuff, and as I learn stuff, I'm learning and making notes, and as I'm doing stuff, I'm recording and talking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. What that means is I now have a resource. If my first run is successful and produces the result that I want, I now have a resource that can be a training material or a training asset for somebody else to do it. Because if I've done it once and I got the results that I want to get, and I have a video of me talking about what I'm doing and explaining why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, I can give that to somebody else and they can do whatever I need them to do, right? So bringing it back to me and my love of doing many things, that's how I do it. Want to learn how to do podcasting, figure that stuff out. As you figure it out, record yourself doing it. You have your training material. If you can hire somebody, give them that training material. They can go through it, understand what you mean. You have basically a turnkey system, or a business in a box, if you will, whereby so long as you can do the thing, you can hire people. And I suppose the flip side of the business in the box idea is you have access to a pool of people that need that service or they need that thing to be done for them. Then you just make yourself the middleman. It's like, hey, I do podcasting, but really I don't. My team handles it. I just give them direction for what they need to do.
I love how you have the whole digital roadmap that someone could just follow and hand over to someone else.
It stems from systems thinking, right? Because if you take myself or even yourself, for example, you didn't always know the things that you know now. You
Mm.
couldn't always do the things that you can do now. You had to learn, right? So if you take that approach whenever it comes to hiring, if you had to learn it, then somebody else can learn it. Your job just becomes making the producing the learning material, the training material that would get them to 80% of where they need to be. They don't need to be a superstar. They just need to be 80%, right? And when they get to that 80%, the more they do it, the better they get. So it becomes like I was going to say Ouroboros, but that's not a good example. It becomes a learning loop, if you will, right? It's like learning to walk. When you're born, you don't know how to walk. You first have to like learn to crawl, and then from crawling, you stand up on your feet. Then you need to find balance on your feet. Then you take your first step, and after you take your first step, the more steps you take, the more stable you get. The more stable you get, the faster you walk. Once you get used to walking fast, then you can run. I view business exactly the same way, especially digital marketing, because there's so many different courses and so many different trainings available out there. If you can find someone who's got the right attitude, right, that's also something that we look for in the hiring process. We tend to prioritize the attitude of the person over the skill, primarily for the reason I just said. There's so many different training materials out there, so many different courses. You just need to find the right course. If you have the right person and find the right course, match made in heaven.
I can relate to that, obviously, with my background in digital marketing.
Yeah.
When it comes to your digital marketing projects and what's your process for simplifying your end results? Because you seem to be focused on the end result, because you were talking about how even when you speak to one to many, you always think about, if I'm just speaking to one person and delivering this end result, what I'm trying to get across to this one person, then it would automatically default go to everyone else, but I'm not too bothered about everyone else. I'm just focusing on that one person.
Yeah.
So you have this really sharp focus on your end result that you want to produce or create.
Yeah.
And I could see where your creation process is happening, and how you handle your tension, your creative tension, so to speak, is you focus on the end result. And once you do that, you automatically just filter through all the hurdles and challenges that come your way.
Mm. When you say it like that, I can see it, right? But it's not something that I would say I sat down to think about. What I did sit down to think about was my values, and one of my values is simplicity.
Yeah.
Right? How can I get this across in a way that doesn't take too many words? How can I get this across in a way that somebody not as experienced as me can actually understand what I'm trying to say? And I guess you could say this kind of comes from working with Dan in the groups, right? Because whenever you have a group of people chasing goals that are similar, like chasing a similar thread of goals, if I could say that, whenever you have those people together, they ask questions, and you get to see how people ask questions. And when you see how they ask questions, if you're observant enough, you can kind of see where they're like, there are bits just missing in how they're thinking about it. And if you can recognize those bits, it becomes easy for you to simplify stuff, because you can look at things and be like, okay, this person is asking this, but really what they're trying to get to is this end result, right? So how can I eliminate all this fluff in the middle and get them from here to here in the shortest amount of time possible? And really that's what it was. But I like the way you put it. Simplicity leads to end result thinking. Maybe, I don't know, that's a concept that probably needs work, but I like the way you put it.
Well, it's because of the process that you talk about is creativity, and the tension is alchemy. It's turning lead into gold, right?
Yeah.
So that's the simplified way of doing it. Obviously, there's the whole scientific reasoning behind it that goes beyond it, and the resistance that we talk about.
Yeah, but okay. So that that's a weird one, right? Because I have this thing personally that I do whereby more recently now anyway, I tend to focus more on the process than the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so maybe focusing on the process leads to simplicity, because if you do what you need to do, for example, you don't eat shitty foods, and you do exercise regularly 3 times a week, 2 times a week, whatever, you're going to lose weight, right? Even if you're not trying to lose weight, you're going to lose weight because you're doing the things that lead to you losing weight. And really, that's the way I think about it. I don't tend to focus on the outcome. It's more the process. I use the podcast as an example.
But you always had the end result in mind, right? Before you go into the process.
Not really. And I say not really, because if I have the end result in mind, that kind of it puts me in a corner with regards to what I need to do. This is what I mean about like solving puzzles, right? You could solve a puzzle one way, and someone else can look at it and they will solve it in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
That's
But
that's magical to me, right?
But the outcome is still creating the puzzle, right? Still building the puzzle into what?
The outcome is building the puzzle, but I don't focus on the outcome is the point I'm trying to make, right? I take the steps I feel I need to take to get me somewhere I think I want to go. I have no idea what the outcome is going to be. I'm going to do the thing regardless. Like, for example, in well, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be promoting a 5-day challenge, right, for local businesses to use Facebook ads to generate customers, right? In sitting down to talk about that, I know what I want to do, or I know the result I'm trying to get them. Use Facebook ads to generate clients, right? I then have to break that down to be like, so what do they need to do? What do they need to do? I think they need to do X, Y, Z. If you pose that question to someone else, they would say something entirely different. Oh, maybe they need to do A, B, C. Maybe, who the hell knows? I'm doing it one way that I think it needs to be done, and I'm focusing on taking the steps I need to take, which I think will get me to where I want to get to. Will it work? I don't know. Right? There's no guarantees in life. I don't know if it'll work, but for too long, whenever I guess the reason I'm kind of fighting it on this is because there was like 2 or 3 years of my life where I was focused on the outcome, right? Thinking outcome first. Like, here's what I'm trying to do. Okay, I'll do all of these things, right? But in doing that, you tend to find that there are going to be points where you come up against roadblocks.
Yeah.
Right. And when you come up against those roadblocks, if you are too focused on the outcome, you can easily get discouraged. But if you change your mentality to be that of like, yo, we're just doing the process. For example, I talked about the losing weight. How many people try to lose weight? When they start, they lose a whole bunch of weight. Then their body gets used to it, and then they don't lose as much weight. Then they think, oh, I just need to go harder. And then they go harder, and then they burn themselves out. And before you know it, you're sitting around freaking 12 o'clock on a Saturday night, eating all the freaking McNuggets and Big Macs that you ordered from Just Eat just because you push yourself too hard and you're at your wit's end. Whereas if you take that slow burn approach of like, let's just focus on the process. I know I need to consume less calories. I need to consume less calories and move more to use those calories up, and the weight will fall off, right? And then you just make that your day to day, rather than thinking, "Ooh, I'm trying to lose 12 pounds in fucking 12 days." Sorry for swearing. I don't know if you're allowed to swear.
Absolutely fine.
I need to lose 12 pounds in 12 days. Let me burn myself out, and then I lose the 12 pounds, and I get to the 12 days, and I like how good I look in the mirror. And then because I don't have the right habits, I go treat myself for losing the 12 pounds in 12 days. And then I wake up, it's a week later, and then I'm surrounded by McDonald's wrappers or Just Eat wrappers, and I've eaten and I've put on all the weight that I lost in those 12 days, and I've put them straight back on in 6 days. And if anything, I'm probably worse off than I was at the start of those 12 days, right? So I don't really tend to focus that much on the outcome. It's just, you know what the outcome is. You know,
but it's there.
It is there. I'm not saying it's not there. It is there. But detach your expectations from the outcome. Attach it to the process. Because when you attach it to the process, you put yourself in a better place mentally, and emotionally to deal with whatever resistance or roadblocks pop up along the way. That's the point I was trying to make. I just couldn't elaborate it as I just did.
That's cool. No, I like that. I love that, because there is different ways of doing it, and it works for different people. But as long as you have your outcome and you know it's there somewhere, there's a different process. And everyone does things differently, which is why I'm always interested in hearing your thoughts, because you're so systematic in your thinking.
Thank you.
And your processes.
If I could blush, I'd be blushing right now.
I can see it. You're blushing.
Touche, sir. Touche.
I see it in your eyes, shining through. This is fun.
I realized I just sang on this. Well, I tried to sing, and people are actually going to watch this and they're like, that is freaking horrible, Tegs. Why did you do that?
I think it's fantastic because your personality is coming through, and it's rare to see that on camera recorded. So I love it that you're being who you are behind the scenes, because this is what the show is about. Is talking about your truths and just being you, because you don't really show it or you don't get to show it because you choose not to in a way at points. But I know Dan has been forcing you to do so over the years. And it shows that you're coming out of your shell more, that you're being you more, because you're discovering in your process, in your journey, where you stand, what you stand for, what you do, what you love doing, and who you loved being.
Mm, I've I've always been this way. Like you say, I
Don't
choose not
show
to
it.
choose. Yeah, I choose not to show it. Well, in some instances, I choose not to show it. In majority of instances, I tend not to show it because maybe something happened before whereby I showed who I was and I got put down for it, and then that reinforced the belief that I shouldn't show my full self, whatever. Right? But yeah, I've always been this way.
Do you remember what was it that kind of made you put you down or developed that way of hiding behind the scenes? And because for me, it was when I was bullied when I was a kid during school and stuff.
I wasn't bullied as a kid.
Yeah, for me, that's what it was. So obviously, it's 3 years different, but for me, it
Yeah,
was being bullied. I had low confidence. Language was a barrier because English wasn't my first language. Cantonese was. So during school, I couldn't communicate with my teachers, with kids, and therefore I was excluded from playing activities, and I was always alone. So therefore, my confidence levels was always just shot. I just never had any, which which made me take up martial arts to build up that confidence in myself again, and obviously start integrating again with society a bit more than just.
I'll answer your question. How how did you get into martial arts?
For me to choose to get to martial arts, I was inspired by Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan as Asians in the late 80s, or not early 90s. Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan was the ones that's aired on TV. Jet Li,
Yeah.
and they're like the Asian face heroes on TV. But also it was the counteract that racism was going behind the scenes, with kids going, "What?" and doing all the Chinese noises that they do with martial arts. Like they think all Chinese people do that because Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee does it obviously on TV. So every other Chinese people know martial arts, and I was like, you know what? I do want to take up martial arts just so I could beat up the bullies that hit me, or just self defend. And then that's why I
Which
went up.
which martial arts did you take up?
It was kickboxing and Wing Chun. It was a mixed.
Ooh,
So it was
nice.
mixed Wing Chun and martial and kickboxing. And my sensei and Sifu was at the time, he was a very very tall, fit teacher that just built up that confidence and belief into people. I think it's his teaching, it's the way, it was his approach to life. I think that taught me being calm. Most of like 90, but 99.9% of the time he was calm. And I was like, I want that. I want to be in that state, just being calm, but knowing that I have the skills and ability to defend myself.
I
Which,
think that's a very good point, right? Because that point that you just pointed out there is, I wouldn't say it's a key driver for me, but it's definitely something that I would say that I aspire to. Right? I want to be, in my mind anyway, I want to be in a room whereby everybody around me is losing their mind, and I'm just that lone guy just sitting there, not really laughing at everybody, but just taking it in with the understanding that if the chaos did spread to me or did affect me, I have the ability to handle it.
mhm.
That's why I like learning stuff. That's why I like learning stuff. Is why I like observing people, because in my opinion, you learn a lot from observing. But to go back to the question that kind of took us down that rabbit hole, I don't think it was one thing in particular that made me like that. It would just been like a bunch of different experiences, right? And when I was younger, right, I was very very stubborn. Like one story that comes to mind is I think I was 14, maybe 15. So formative years for a guy anyway.
Hmm.
And we just moved to the UK. We moved to the UK when I was 13. We just moved to the UK. I was still figuring stuff out. I'd lost a whole bunch of friends. So I was a little bit, I was a lot more introverted. Let's say that I was a lot more introverted, and I was going on a walk with my dad one day, and he was trying to speak to me, and I was just giving him one word answers. And he was trying to break through, and in trying to break through, he said something. I remember to this day. He said, no man is an island. And in my rebellious teenage mind, I'm like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm about to be the biggest one-man island you ever did see, right? And that was the mentality I had for a little while. And anything I wanted to do, I had to do it myself. If I had a problem, I had to figure it out myself. If I had a problem, I had to solve it myself and like not talk to people. Uh, Obviously, it has positives and negatives, but at the time, I didn't really realize that. So it's just little things like that that would have added up and built up over time. It wasn't one specific thing, like when you point out bullying was probably a big factor of that for you. It wasn't that for me. I mean, I wasn't really bullied. I was in school. I think like I walked a very fine line, right? People knew when to leave me alone, but people also kind of knew when to approach and when to speak. So, in that regard, I wasn't really a loner, but when I
Hmm.
wanted alone time, I could have alone time. So, yeah, like I don't think there was one incident that was like, yeah, that was the thing that made me not want to talk about myself or show what I'm good at and things like that.
Interesting. Was it trying to prove to your father or get approval or validation? Was any of those?
It was just being a rebel, man.
Fair enough.
Who the hell says after you hear no man is an island? Who the hell thinks, well, I'm about to prove you wrong, right? I think it's just generally being a rebel. Like
Hmm.
at that time and that point in my life, it was just being a rebel. There wasn't any underlying factors. It was just like, okay, you think I can't do it? Watch me prove you wrong, type thing.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm aware of the time. So if people
Ah,
wanted
you're
to
you're you're good.
find,
You're good, dude. If you want to keep talking, I'm happy to keep talking.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to
Nah,
carry
dude.
on.
So the people that may not know, I have a podcast, right? And I'm still trying to figure out my voice on the podcast. And because I'm trying to figure out my voice on the podcast, anything that allows me to talk, especially if it's like this, one to one. Yeah, I know this is going out in public and people are going to see this and going to hear me talking about it. But anything that's like this, I like to go down the rabbit hole. Um, I ended up having the podcast, the episode that we missed 2 weeks ago, ended up being 2 hours long. It was only scheduled for like an hour. It ended up being 2 hours long because we just kept talking and talking and talking. Didn't realize how much time had gone. So I'm all for it, dude.
I just aware if your schedules was booked up or not.
It's all good. Every time I do one of these, I tend to clear up and leave plenty of time. So if it runs over, it runs over. Don't feel the need to cut it short just because you think I need to go or I have to go. If I have to go, I'll let you know.
Fair enough. So we carry on down the rabbit hole, as you say.
There we go.
And in the time of your rebel life, what was your decision that made you change? Goes, I need to change my attitude or change my way a little bit. Was there a time or an instant where you felt maybe it's time for change or do something else a bit differently?
Mm,
Especially when you said you chose the decision to reach out to Dan with that email. I mean, that was like a turning point for you when you said you reached. But
no, it's not really. See that
huh?
to me anyway. That's part of the whole rebel thing,
Was that but
right?
what was you trying to? You were just trying to achieve something, right? By choosing that decision to
I think I was
reach
just
out.
being a bit of. I think I was just being a bit of a twant. because he put his number in an email. I'm like, which idiot puts their personal mobile number in an email that he's sending to people that buy stuff on the internet? I'm gonna call him, and I did. Like, it's a little bit rebellious. I wouldn't say I was reaching out because I felt like I couldn't do stuff on my own. If we're talking about like not doing stuff on my own and coming to that realization, I think it would have been probably around the time I was what, 25, maybe 26. It would have been around that time, and what would have spurred that on was I worked in a restaurant. I worked in a restaurant about that time,
Mm.
and the way it worked in that restaurant was that you had sections, right? The floor was like split into section, and there was a specific way to allocate it to a specific section. But then you had support, and then there'd been a few people that complained that sometimes whenever I was on the floor, stuff used to take too long. And then I sat down with my manager at the time. It was like, yo, there is a team. There's a reason why it's a team. You can't do it alone. You've got this section that you're trying to look over. When we're busy, stuff falls through the crack. That's why it's a team. And that was probably when I realized and when I became more open to the idea of working with people. I mean, even then, I wasn't really open. I kind of saw it as a means to an end. They were helping me do my job, and that was as far as it went. Um, yeah, that's when I would say it. I guess uni also helped with that, right? Because the way uni helped with that was in doing film and TV. One of our modules was to like make a film. You could choose what type of film you wanted to make. We chose to go with documentary. So when you choose to do a documentary, there's going to be a whole bunch of research. People have to do things that others can't do. You have to figure out what you're good at and what you like, see if what you're good at matches what you like, and if it does, then run with it. If not, where is there going to be compromise so that as a team, because everybody has to work as a team for you to get good grades to create good stuff. So that kind of helps as well. I think I wouldn't say I lost that rebellious thing, but I always remember that story of my dad saying no man is an island and me going, watching me prove you wrong type stuff. I'm glad that I did kind of get over that no man is an island stuff, because if I did, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And there are definitely times whereby I still hold on to issues or problems, as it were, because I'm still trying to solve it myself. Whenever I can just say, yo, I need help. Can you look over this and let me know what I'm not seeing? So yeah, I don't think there was a point. It's just something that I've gradually grown out of, I would say.
Mm. No, I love that because we all have those points where there's so many things that accumulate from our childhood, like you said, that we're still trying to grow out of or let go of. That doesn't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
I've always found it fascinating because I went through this journey myself of discovering where all this anger comes from and frustration and yeah, the frustration and anger. I think that's for me. And resentment. I have a lot of that with my parents because I felt unloved during childhood. And there's so many of these stories, and I was just like, oh wow, when you go down this rabbit hole, it's a whole new ball game.
It is. Um, it is for sure, right? It's why self development is the kind of industry it is. I think like in monetary terms, like a billion pound, $1 billion, whatever currency you
Yeah.
use in your locality. It is. Those that are willing to do the work end up doing the work and getting past it, and those that aren't willing to do the work end up just repeating cycles and cycles. So yeah,
And some people just get stuck in it, right?
and it like they do, and
What was
they
it
come.
like for you when you, because you said you did courses and stuff like that. Like most people in digital marketing, we all buy courses and do
Yeah,
this and think we get buy one course and we become successful after we follow one course. Obviously, this something we kind of think is true, but it's obviously we know it's not.
What was the question?
What was it like for you when you did find out that realization of, one buying one course doesn't make you successful?
Inherently, I would say I always knew that. Inherently, I would say that I always knew that. Deep down, I always knew that. But something that I think everybody who ventures into this field tends to go through is there's just that little voice in the back of your head. It's like, yeah, just one more. That one has the secret. Look, it says so on the sales page. It has the secret. And generally, people lack the. To say people is wrong. That's a wrong generalization. Generally, up to a certain point, I lacked the self discipline and the self control to be like, yo, enough. Right? You have over a terabyte of these things, and you have all of these different accesses on your hard drive. You haven't gone through it once. Figure out why you haven't gone through it, as opposed to wasting more money to buy yet another course or another thing or another mastermind that you're not going to actually use and go through. It wasn't until I started having that discussion with myself that things changed. The only secret to getting what you need to get is you have to work for it. Right? Everything works. You just need to put in the work. Everything works. Forex, it works. If there's somebody making money from it, it freaking works, in my opinion. FBA, it works. Is it difficult? Is it saturated? Who the hell knows? It works. SEO, it works. Facebook marketing, it works. Arbitrage, it works. Posting on eBay, it works. You just need to figure out what you want to do and have the strength of character and fortitude to actually go through it.
That is so true. Everything works. It's just whether you want to make it work.
It's not even if you want to make it work. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about.
Well, it's having the discipline to keep going through, right? Keep following through with the result, to keep getting the results and challenges, and think, is this what I want to do? Because if you do want to do it, you wouldn't mind the challenges, right?
I think it's been attached to the outcome, right? If you look at all the courses, they're selling an outcome. Nobody's selling the process. Nobody's selling that sucky middle bit, right? So when you buy it based on the outcome, especially now, what marketers have gotten good at is they're selling you a dream. They're selling you a dream, like, yo, look over there in the distance, right? That's what you want. Whether it's money, whether it's a better relationship, whatever it is, that's what they're selling you. But what they're not selling is what it takes to get there, right? These are the same people that will tell you, oh yeah, you can become a multiple seven figure. You can become a multiple seven-figure business owner in 30 days, right? You just need to follow this magic system, or this. You need to plant this magic bean that I'm going to give you, and then when you plant the bean, you're like, oh no, I need to make sure that there's enough. Using the bean as an example, I need to make sure there's enough nutrient in the soil. I need to make sure I'm watering this every day. I need to make sure I'm cutting all the weeds so it's not taking the nutrients that should be going to the bean to make the bean grow up nice and big and strong, right? And that is what is going on. It's not. I've kind of got lost in my thought, but the general idea is stop buying the dream, or if you are going to buy the dream, understand that you are buying a dream, but at some point you're going to have to roll up your sleeves, right, and apply some elbow grease, whatever that may be. Like I said, whether it's FBA, whether it's Forex, you can't cheat time served. You've got to put in that time, because there's no way that you are going to think, oh, I'll buy a product that shows me how to make 7 figures in 30 days. Like, if it was that simple, everybody would be freaking doing it.
Let's talk about some positive habits that you've built up, Because I know that's helped you in your thinking and your routines as well. What's incomes? I guess for you was it gym, wasn't it, that you put into your routine? You started to put into your routine.
Um,
Well, you focus on your health anyway, a bit more than you did.
More recently, yeah, the turning point for me was deciding what my non-negotiables were,
Mm.
right? And in deciding what those non-negotiables were, I find that the gym was a big part of it. And I can say that now, like with 100% certainty, because when lockdown kicked off,
Yeah.
or just before lockdown kicked off, my sister, who's a doctor, works. Well, she was working primarily with a segment of the population that's more at risk. So older people with compromised immune systems and what have you.
Mm.
She comes back from work one day saying, "Ooh, I have a temperature," right? And at the time, the corona swell was really just starting. Nobody really knew. They knew what was going on, but nobody had any idea like how it was being transmitted, what the symptoms were. None of that was clear. The waters were still murky. So she phones up work and they're like, "Oh, you have to self isolate." And because she was self isolating, she had to self isolate for 7 days. And because I live in a house with her, I had to self isolate for 14 days. Prior to those 14 days, other than the odd miss because I was too tired, I was being a little bit lazy, and I had to reschedule, I hadn't really missed the gym. So I'd gone from like 2 years of consistently Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday
Yeah.
to Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 o'clock. I'm at the gym. And those 2 weeks, I went from like those 2 years to those 2 weeks of not doing anything. Um, I put on weight,
Yeah.
unsurprisingly, because I was
Yeah.
I was I was I was eating more. I wasn't doing anything, and I just felt miserable. I just felt miserable. Everything kind of became real foggy. Became
Mm.
hard to think. Like I'd wake up in the morning, even though I planned my day the night before, I'd wake up in the morning thinking, "Oh, what do I need to do?" I would look at my list and just felt unmotivated. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." So procrastination goes up as well. I think in those 2 weeks, I think I started and I completed Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah, I did. I started and completed Red Dead Redemption 2 because I hadn't played it. I bought it 2 years prior, hadn't played it. It was just sitting there on my shelf, and I was looking at my shelf whenever I was meant to be at the gym one day. I'm like, "Ooh, I haven't actually played this," because I just remember it being a little bit of a slog to get started, to get past like the first hour. And then the 2 weeks went by, and I was brushing my teeth one morning, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I'm like, "Yo, when did that happen? When did that happen?" So I sat down and thought about it. I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't actually been to the gym in 2 weeks. Look at what I'm eating, not really that great." And then connect the dots, like, "Oh yeah." So the gym is a key thing. And then at the time, just as my 2 week self-imposed quarantine was coming to an end, that's when the government started floating the idea of everybody going into lockdown. So my trainer, being who he was, he decided, okay, I can't train people at the gym anymore. I can't actually go to them and work with them one on one. What can I do? Zoom became the answer that everybody turned to at the time. So he said, "Yo, do you want to try Zoom sessions?" I'm like, "Yes, please." And then I had to get over the hump of go from not working out to working out again, because it's scary how quickly that mental switch happens, whereby, "Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing this consistently, it takes no effort, don't do it for 2 weeks, and then to get back into it, no, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this type thing." So yeah, it was the gym. It was the gym. I think to add to that a little bit, reading James Clear's book Atomic Habits, that actually helped,
Mm.
because for me what that did was it gave me a thinking framework
Yeah.
to approach problems with, right? So if using the gym as an example, if I'm struggling to go to the gym, how about I make it not about going to the gym? It becomes about the things I do that lead up to me going to the gym, right? Prior to when we could leave the house, that meant on the gym day, waking up, putting my gym clothes aside, and setting my alarm so that at a certain point I need to get changed. And if I'm getting changed into gym clothes and I'm doing the things I need to do to go to the gym, why am I going to do that if I'm not going to leave the house and go to the gym, right? So I had to use that for 3 or 4 weeks whenever they're doing the Zoom sessions, because what I noticed in those 3 or 4 weeks is I became a whiny little so and so. Like I would do what I needed to do, but then during the session I'll be complaining and I'll be lollygagging, I'll be procrastinating, and the session that should take an hour is now taking an hour and a half just because I'm being a whiny little so and so, right? So it became, I had to accept that I was going to be a whiny little so and so, right? Just to get back into the habit. And then once I got into the habit, the next thing to conquer became stop complaining. You need to work out. You've got the clothes on. You're on Zoom. Do what the guy is saying to do. That's what you're paying them for. So yeah, I would say reading Atomic Habits was life changing. And I'm making air quotes, but I'm being deadly serious. It was life changing in the sense that it gave me that thinking framework to break down the problem to more manageable chunks I could use to build momentum to then get over the hump, whatever the hump was. In the case and the example I just used, it was the gym. But it has been useful in business as well, right? Because in working with my team, it allows me to break down how to communicate with them so that they get the point I'm trying to make without having to play email tennis or Slack tennis, messages going back and forth and not really saying much.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I love that you found something that works for you, because that was something that I struggled with as well. Going from 2 years of consistent gym to home workouts was like, instead of lifting heavy weights, it's press ups and squats and burpees. But it's different feeling from the you go to a squat rack and you're like squatting heavy.
I was lucky in that regard. Right, I was lucky in that regard. I may have developed the self-discipline to stop buying info products, right? But that habit then picked up somewhere else, and what I found was that habit picked up in buying workout equipment. I have a box full of them, right? So whenever this happened, I was maybe in a better place than average Joe Q public off the street, because I've got a pair of 12 kilo kettlebells. I've got a pair of 16 kilo kettlebells. I've got a 20 kilo kettlebell. I've got some bands, like resistance bands. I've got a pull-up bar. So making that switch, yeah, it was challenging, but because I did have all those equipment just lying about, it was just a case of dusting that thing off and like, oh, I get to use you now. I spent £100 on this 2 years ago, and it's just been sitting there collecting dust.
But it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Present me thanks past me for blowing the money on buying those things, because if I hadn't, then things would probably be very, very different now.
Or you would have probably paid triple the price to get the same equipment now, because they're going up so much in price.
Oh man, when I bought my kettlebells 2 years ago, the 20 kilo one was the most expensive. I think for that one I paid like £50.
Yeah.
Now you can't get a 20 kilo dumbbell, never mind a kettlebell, for less than £150. And I'm looking at it going, whoa. Present me truly does thank past me.
Should have gone into selling,
wasting my money and buying those things.
Should have gone into selling weights instead. Who knew, right? Who knew?
Who knew indeed. And talking about making that jump to selling weights instead, it kind of feeds back to the whole shiny
object syndrome.
We call it shiny object syndrome, more shiny opportunity syndrome, right?
Yes.
Because the way we're wired, a problem isn't just a problem, right? A problem becomes a means to an end. Perfect example, the whole podcasting thing. That's a problem somebody had. I thought, if I can solve that, people will pay me to solve that problem, right? So when you have that mentality, it then becomes a case of being aware of opportunity costs. Why would you want to take the time to start selling gym equipment whenever you have the equipment, use it and just stay in your lane rather than thinking, oh, I can make a quick buck here. Let me sell the gym equipment. So yeah, I it's nice to have the idea, but just be aware of opportunity cost as well. That's also something that I tend to think more about, especially more in these days, because
Mm.
like I say, there's so many things I could be doing. Right, if I want to start a web design agency, technically I could, but do I really want to? Do I want to go through the process of hiring a web designer and then start talking to people about websites? Nah, not really. Like the time and opportunity is going to cost whenever I can focus on my own thing and build my own thing rather than starting something else. Rather than like instead of saying start and build my own thing, talk about my own thing because
Yeah, I was gonna say,
that's
let's talk about your own thing. What is your own thing?
that seems to be my pitfall. I don't talk about my thing. Instead of talking about
Let's
my thing, I just be like, nah, I'll just go do something. I'm gonna start something entirely unrelated and not pay attention or talk on. I'd rather start something entirely not really unrelated, but I'd rather start something else entirely than talk about myself and talk about what I do or what I'm good at.
so let's talk about your thing.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. What you want to know?
What is it that you're creating right now, and where do you want to take it?
Okay. So the the big idea, if you will, is to help people build a business. Right? And when I say a business, I'm referring to help people become business owners. And when I say business owners, I'm referring particularly to the cash flow quadrant illustration from the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Right?
Mm.
And the quadrant is a quadrant. It's made up. It's like a square divided into four. And then you have E, which is employed. You have S, which is self-employed. You have B, which is business owner, and then you have I, which is investor. I like that idea because it really simplifies the journey that you have to go through, right? As I don't want to say an entrepreneur, but as someone who wants to create income in whatever way. I was struggling to put that into words there. Right? It's a journey that you have to go through. Take myself for example. I was employed. Right? I've had jobs. I've had several jobs, which I all liked. Right? But with a job, there's a ceiling. That ceiling primarily being you're exchanging your time for money. You only have 24 hours in a day. There's no way you're going to achieve big things if you stay in a job.
Yeah.
Depending on the job that you have, right? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is being self-employed. In some cases, being self-employed is worse than having a job because you're working for a freaking maniac, aka yourself. If you haven't done the work, or if you aren't self-aware, then being self-employed is not a very good place to be. Because if you get lazy and skive off for a week, guess what? You ain't getting paid for a week. It's not you have holiday pay coming through, right? So where the employed person is exchanging time for money, the self-employed person is taking 10 steps back, because not only are you exchanging time for money, but you're not operating from the tougher position of having to police yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're having to go out, find clients, and then do the work for those clients. And it's like a very binary equation. It's either on or it's off, right? You're either finding clients, which means you're not doing the work, or you're either doing the work, which means you're not finding clients. So it's very up and down, very undulating. And then from there, you have the business owner, which is somebody that has systems doing the work for them. Systems in this term, very general. Systems can be systems, it can be people, right? When you're a business owner, you position yourself in this place where you get freedom, whatever that means to you, right? So unlike the employed and self-employed person, you can take time off and stuff still runs because you have systems and you have people working for you. And then the next box is being the investor, whereby instead of systems and people, you have money working for you, right? At any point in time, you can make a jump to any of those quadrants in the box. If you are going to make a jump, you need to be aware of the pros and cons of where you're jumping to. Personally, I feel that being a business owner positions you in such a way that gives you the greater leverage, right? Because you can be a business owner, but you can still operate from the employee box because you're a business owner, you're choosing to go back there. You can be a business owner, you can choose to operate from the investor box because if your business is working and it's bringing in money, the next logical thing is to make that money work for you. You can be a business owner and still be self-employed, so long as you make that choice, right? So the core of what I the core of the problem in my mind that I'm trying to solve is to help people be better business owners. How can you be a better business owner? If you can hire people, if you have a system that can hire people reliably, like 80% success rate, whereby if you hire 5 people, for example, 3 of them, is that 80%? I'm showing how bad I am at math, whatever the number is, right? If you can reliably hire people that are going to work out as opposed to you have to hire, fire, hire, fire. If you can do that, then you edge closer to getting that freedom, right? And then the step up from that is if you can systemize what you're doing, if you can systemize the processes that you need to go through to produce an end result, and if you combine that with being able to hire people, you effectively remove yourself from the process. And that's what I'm trying to do. It doesn't really matter what in my opinion, because I've tried this with podcasting, I've tried this with Facebook ads. I'm about to have a play at it with content repurposing, right? So long as the system is good, and so long as the people working that system are good, you give yourself that freedom. So that is what Tega does, and that's the first time I've actually ever talked about that.
Fantastic. It's here first. Yes. Exclusive news. Now it's just to get it out there into the world so everyone else can hear what you do and actually know what you do.
Yeah, I know, but even then, I could say that, right? And that's still a little bit confusing because people, like, I can see people are going to listen. They'll be like, he does what? But it is what it is. That's the best way that I can describe it. That in my mind, that's the. It's not really a problem. It's a puzzle that I'm working on. Get people to be better business owners by building better systems and hiring more reliable people. Yeah.
It's a big problem because in corporates they have that issue. You know, they're constantly churning out people left, right, and center.
Okay.
But they're building a system, right? But
yeah,
they're not finding the right people to build that
there
puzzle.
you go. There you go. But the thing is, if you're going to look at this in a systems approach, right? There's going to be levels to it. The scale at which I'm looking at that problem is vastly different to the scale at which a corporate organization would look at that. Right? Because yeah, you can take elements of what I'm doing right now and apply it to corporate, but what I'm doing right now probably definitely is not suited to corporate. Right? Because corporate are looking at the problem from an entirely different angle than I am looking at it from. So,
but the people you're serving needs what you have to offer.
Yeah, precisely.
And that's for sure. There's a definite. Awesome. Okay, well, if people wanted to find out more about what you do, Tega, where can they go? I know where you're going with this, but let's go back to this.
Check my Facebook profile. To answer that more seriously, that's a bit of a jokey answer that I've always given in the past, right? Because the reason being, as Jono and I have pointed out through this call or this chat, is I don't like talking about myself. As I'm looking to change that, I should probably change the answer that I give to that. Over the coming weeks, the key place will be my Facebook profile. That becomes the entry point, right? But on my profile, I'm going to talk about the different things that I'm doing. I'm going to actually get serious about my Facebook page because I've had it for years and I haven't really done anything with it. So Facebook is that entry point. If you want to know more about me, if you want to know what I'm working on, Facebook will be the place to go. If you want to perhaps dive deeper into the ideas that I've talked about and get my take on stuff, why you want to get my take, I have no freaking clue. My website would be somewhere that you go to. So those would be the two avenues, my Facebook profile and my website.
But I love how you put it to your profile, because instead of pointing them to a website first, you offered people to connect with you first, personally.
You have to, in my opinion, you have to value connections. I mean, I
That is
said
it.
it. I
That is it.
I thrive in this one-to-one environment. Right. Sometimes to my detriment, because the other day somebody sent me a message like asking about podcasting, and where other people would give just a straight up like cookie cutter answer, I actually dug deeper. I've never met this person. I've never interacted with them before. Like I dug deeper. It's like, okay, so why are you asking this? Are you asking this because you want this outcome or you want this outcome? Because depending on the outcome you want, it's going to be different. So operating from that place of connection first, it's like, why would I send you to my website? Right? If you're going to my website, there are a number of things that are happening. Google Analytics is picking that up. The Facebook pixel is picking that up, right? So if you're not interested in what I'm saying, and when the day comes where I actually want to start seriously running ads, and you see my ad, I'm wasting money to show you that ad. So why not send you to my Facebook profile where I am working on being more consistent in showing what I'm doing and showing my personality, and you can see if that personality is something that jives with you. If it does, cool. We can chat. We can be friends. If it doesn't, we're saving each other time, right? Because you're not going to my website to read whatever I'm posting, which doesn't interest you, which saves me spending money to show what I have to offer down the line to you. And I'm not wasting money showing it to you when you're not going to possibly read or buy my stuff. So it's a win-win. Operate from that place of build the relationship first before you think about the business.
I'm the same. I'm in the same position as I prefer to build the long term relationships. And I think a lot of the clients that I'm working with now as well, or working towards to, is I prefer to have established relationships.
That's
They
the
know
thing.
they know who I am. They know what
Yeah,
I do. They know what I stand for. They get me,
yeah.
and
That is the key thing. Established relationships as opposed to just being like, oh, you landed on my website, my Facebook picture tells me you're interested in my stuff. Go buy my stuff. The, to me, it just feels kind of janky. It feels kind of janky, especially with the way that I've chosen to operate. I'm choosing to operate at a place or at a level where most people probably wouldn't go, right?
yeah,
In the sense that I'm choosing to help people be better business owners. And when I said that, I explained what I meant by business owners by talking about this idea that I read in the book and have kind of taken it and built something off of that concept, like the cash flow quadrant, and deciding who my pocket of people within that quadrant was going to be. Because I've chosen to operate that, I know and I understand that everything I say is not going to make sense to some people, but to the person it makes sense to, they're the type of person that they're the people that I would like to work with. Like, yeah. So relationships of connection as opposed to relationships, because relationships kind of signifies you're trying to get something out of them. Connections over everything else. Connections first, and then everything else follows.
but it's having that synergy as well, isn't it?
In what way?
Synergy of just knowing each other or knowing enough of each other and goes, oh, I like what he does, what he stands for. Yeah, like you said, the connection
Yeah,
in
it's
a
it's
way.
it's the
You
connection.
click in a way that, yeah, he gets my thinking.
Yeah.
He can solve my problem. Because that was one thing that I tried to get over a long time was, do I build a digital services system where I'm just serving everyone left, right, and center, or do I want to play the long game and serve the people who I really want to work with? Like you said, you're narrowing down with the people who you choose to work with.
Yeah.
If you click, but for those that don't, you're like, why am I wasting my time serving you adverts
Uh,
that you probably don't want to see or may not be interested in what I do?
yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. I wouldn't say why am I wasting my time, because I
No,
don't think the time interacting with people is wasted. It's just when you're spending money to get attention,
but for
it,
adverts,
it
I meant.
has it has to be the right attention, right? Because this whole lockdown situation and the murder of George Floyd and everything that's kind of spawned off of that, it's highlighted just how different we all are, how different we think. Like we may wake up, we may put our feet on the same ground, but the way that we live our lives is completely different, right? Good or bad, who the hell am I to judge, right? Who the hell am I to judge that? I'm not going to judge how you live your life. But when it comes to something to me as personal and as involved as work, you need to put guards in place to make sure that the people you're working with share the same ideas as you.
Mm.
I've got friends who view life way different to me, right? Just because they view life way different to me doesn't mean that we can't be friends, because there's stuff that we can teach each other. We may we may argue, or our opinions may differ on certain things, but it doesn't make them any less of a person, right? But when it comes to work, I feel that you should make that distinction of where your time goes, because that's
Yeah.
important. When it's not work, that's cool, right? Because you can shut that person off, whether you're muting them on Facebook, whether you're saying, yeah, I'm choosing not to speak to this person anymore, you can do that. But when it comes to business, if you start off by just accepting any and everybody, you kind of become a slave to any and everybody, especially if their ideals and the way they think doesn't really match with the ideals you have and the way you like to do things.
Awesome. Right, I'm aware of where we are, and thank you for your time, Tega, for all this.
Thank you for
Really,
having me.
really appreciate your insights, because you always have so much wisdom that you have within you. I love that you shared more about you and what you do, and your personality as well. Man. Like coming through this podcast, I really love the way you've really shown through that.
My pleasure, dude. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking to invite me. I know you said you were getting some superstars. I don't know if that qualifies me as a superstar, but thank you
Oh
for the opportunity
yes,
to speak and to share.
I, I'm I'm grateful and humbled that you've decided to come on, because when I was reaching out for people, I was just scared. I was just like, should I not, do I not? Yeah, I was having this battle within myself, and I
I,
was just
I,
like,
I know that struggle. So, sorry to cut you off. I
that's
definitely
right.
know that struggle because I have my own podcast, right? Um, and the anxiety is kind of twofold, right? So even though I'm reaching out to people that I'm friends with on Facebook, which is actually why I started my podcast, because I feel like I'm friends with so many cool people, but
Mm,
I don't really know them. So my podcast is kind of built off of this kind of vibe. We just get together and we talk. If we talk about business, cool, we talk about business. If we talk about life, we talk about life. Right? An issue then becomes, oh, if I'm gonna reach out to these guys to invite them to a podcast, do they just want to hop on and basically just chat with me? Is there any value in that? Right? So I go through that whenever I'm reaching out, and then whenever someone does say yes, the next anxiety that falls on my head is, oh no, what the hell am I going to talk to them about? Right?
yeah,
So I totally get that. So, in my opinion, you're doing brilliant. You just keep reaching out. The way you reached out to me, I liked it because you said, yo, I'm doing this. I'd like for you to be part of it. Would you like to be? There's there's something so brilliant in that simplicity, right? And if you detach yourself from the outcome of whether the person says yes or no, you just need to go through that process of being you, being likable, and then just reaching out the way that you reached out. And if it's of interest, people say yes, like I did. And if it's not, they say no. The world doesn't end. It keeps spinning.
yeah, exactly. That was the thought process I had. But I'm glad that you said yes, and you're here, and you've done this. So thank you
I'm
so much.
I'm super glad I said yes. So thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
making the offer and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure we'll get to catch you up soon. So
I'm
speak
sure
soon.
we
Thank
will.
you.
We roll in the same circle, so that's a given.
Thank you, Sega.
All right, thanks, dude.